Okay, hello English Lit students. This is a lecture on the context of production of Twelfth Night, by which we mean how it was actually put on stage, what were the financial and legal frameworks around putting on plays in Shakespeare's time. So, Shakespeare belonged to a company of players called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. And they literally were. They were his servants. The Lord Chamberlain was a major post at the royal court. For example, under Elizabeth I, it was held by a cousin of hers. So you had to be very, very high up in the aristocracy, even a royal member of the royal household, to have the post of being Lord Chamberlain. And then you would have hundreds, if not more, servants. And amongst those servants could be players on the stage. The Lord Chamberlain was the boss of a role below him called the Master of the Revels. And revels, great word, is fun and games. So very, relevant to Twelfth Night. And the Master of the Revels licensed players and plays. So there was state control of theatres and plays and people putting them on. To the extent that there were only 2 officially approved acting companies in London. And it was in 1595 that Shakespeare's company came under the patronage of the Lord Chamberlain's Men. He was a member of that, and they were officially a member of the Lord Chamberlain's household. They wore, or they could, wear his livery. So they wore his sort of colours and his badge. The company was literally a company like we would think of today as a limited trading company. They were sharers. So they all had a share. So the major, there were plenty of people who weren't sharers, but 6 members were actually sharers. They shared the ownership of the theatre itself and therefore all the profits. And from 1595, that was the Globe. Shakespeare was their chief playwright, not their only playwright, but their chief playwright. Excuse me. So, the Globe Theatre, please remember this is a rebuilt facsimile. Yeah, it's on the site of where the Globe Theatre was, but it's only a guess at what the Globe Theatre looked like. The Globe Theatre, the original one, was owned and operated by the Lord Chamberlain's Men. It opened in 1599. And by the year 1600, there were 6 public theatres operating in London. And that meant, in all of them, if you added up all the seats, there was seating for 3,000 people. Given that the population of London at that point was only 100,000 people, it's been calculated that on a Saturday, up to 20% of Londoners could have been watching one of these plays. So it gives you that sense that it's far more like cinema is today, or television is today, in what a mass audience it reached compared to theatre today. Now, it's something you may not have learnt at GCSE is that Shakespeare's plays weren't only performed in the public theatre. So the Globe is a public theatre. Anyone who's got a penny can go in and watch. Women and men and servants, whatever rank, yeah, you can watch the plays. But there were also private performances. Now, if you were rich enough, you would have the private performance in your own house. You'd have a big, big house and you would pay the players to come to your house to entertain your guests. But there were other institutions in London that could take in the theatre and use it to entertain the people who lived there. Indoor performances on the whole had a higher class audience. Often they were more expensive, and the places they were played in belonged to higher status people. They would be performed by candlelight. So if you think about the difference of the Globe is by daylight, candlelight creates a very different mood. And they would have different acoustics. Yeah, in the Globe, there was a little bit of a protruding roof, but the sound had a lot of space to go into, whereas you'd have very different acoustics. It's possible that it was with private theatres in mind, which explains the amount of music in something like Twelfth Night. And most people suggest Shakespeare was writing more for private theatres towards the end of his career, well, from this point onwards. So Twelfth Night, the first recorded performance of Twelfth Night we have is not at the Globe, but at a place called the Middle Temple. The Middle Temple was a place where lawyers could live and work. So they could have their offices there, but also they would have a lodging room there, and they would have a big hall where they could go eat together, and they would, it's a bit like boarding school for grown-ups, because they're all men, they're all in the same profession, and it means you can sort of pool your resources, so you can pay for servants together, your food together, and you have this communal atmosphere. And for festive events, they would have fun and games, and Twelfth Night was performed at a festival called Candlemas. That's right at the end of Christmas. I mean, of the medieval Christmas, so into February. There were very different attitudes to plays and playgoing in the country at the time. It was very controversial. And we talked about this when we talked about Stubbs' abuses. If you remember Stubbs, George Stubbs the Puritan, and his sermons, very critical of plays and playgoing. And people in local government often were extreme Protestant or Puritan by nature, particularly in the City of London. And this is a bit of a while before Shakespeare, but it gives you an idea of attitudes to plays and playgoing. It was in the Vagabond Act. So vagabonds are worthless, beggarly, begging people. And all masterless men, yeah, that's a man without a master. You're not employed by anybody. And this included people who went around fencing, people who dragged bears around. It's horrible now to think about it, but you may have seen this in places maybe still today, like Turkey or places, performing animals that were trained / tortured, and then people would give you coins, and the bears would be made to dance. Common players of interludes and minstrels. So you can see there how common players of interludes, that's actors, are put together with all this bunch of vagabonds. Minstrels are wandering musicians. If they don't belong to any honourable person, if they're wandering abroad without the licence of 2 magistrates, they were subject to be grievously whipped and burned through the gristle of the right ear. So Shakespeare's one step up from this, because he has a master, he does belong to an honourable person, but that's what makes him not a vagabond. Acting for money in 1574, acting for money had been banned in the City of London, and as I say, the City of London was particularly controlled by this particularly Puritan or strong Protestant sect. It's why the theatres were built over the river, outside of the City of London. City of London's jurisdiction ended at the River Thames. South of the River Thames was not the City of London. And it wasn't. It's in 1594 that there were officially approved players' companies, but they had to have an aristocratic patron, and it was the patron who applied for the license for the players. You may wonder what this has got to do with the theatre, but actually quite a lot. Going to watch blood sports, including dog fighting, cockfighting, which were 2 cockerels, and they would have metal spurs put on their heels, so when they fought they would cut each other up. These were all as popular as going to the theatre, and really in the same vein. These were the options on your Saturday afternoon. You're an apprentice boy, you got some money in your pocket, or you're a serving girl or a working girl, you know what I mean? You got money, what am I going to do with my Saturday afternoon off? I'll go across the river to the South Bank and see what fun can be had. I can watch a play, I can watch a bear tied to a stick getting attacked by dogs. They were held in exactly the same location, so you can see from the picture that it's very similar layout, a round open space, people standing around in the open air around it. And fun as it is to watch a bear tied to a stake being attacked by fighting dogs who it would fight back, the audience would also gamble on the result. Who knows what they were gambling on? How many dogs got killed? How long the bear could fight off the dogs? And here's someone talking about what fun it was. It was very pleasant. It was a very pleasant sport to see the bear with his pink eyes tearing after his enemy's approach, with biting, with clawing, with roaring, with tossing and tumbling. Interesting when we put that into context, for example, of how nowadays we don't find the taunting of Malvolio so much fun. Yeah, you're talking about a mindset that, thinks, oh, hilarious fun to watch things being attacked and tortured. And the other key context for Twelfth Night in particular is the very existence of boy actors. Okay, women were forbidden to appear on the public stage in Britain, not in every other European country. Women appeared on the stage in France, possibly, I don't know other countries very well, but in Britain, no. So what would happen was that a boy would be apprenticed. Every young boy had to be apprenticed. That's what you did. You found an apprentice who would become, you found a master who would apprentice you, and they would actually take you into their house. They would feed you, clothe you, lodge you, teach you their trade. You wouldn't get paid much, if at all. But that was how training happened. For hundreds and hundreds of years, that's how people learnt their trades, by being apprenticed, and so actors as well. So they would be apprenticed to a professional actor when they were between the ages of 12 and 21. And there's some research that has shown they would have been mostly between 16 and 17 when they played the female heroines. So Viola, for example. Bear in mind, though, puberty would have been a lot later. Yeah, puberty is linked to the good health of your diet, the health of your conditions, how many illnesses and diseases you've had. So, you know, puberty has really come down in Western European countries since this time. So even at 16, 17, their voices may not have broken yet, they're not growing beards yet. We sort of know that's what the boy actors were like, because there are references to it throughout Shakespeare's plays. Famously in Midsummer Night's Dream, one of the amateur actors says, "Oh, don't make me play the girl. Don't let me play the girl. I've almost got a beard." Yeah, so it lets you know that that was the stage at which boys played women before they were actually men. So boy actors would have played Viola, Olivia, and Margaret in Twelfth Night. And there's a little picture of Edward Kynaston. Now this is, you know, a long time after Shakespeare, but he is the last boy actor who played female roles. And, you know, not to get too weird about it, boys can often be as pretty as girls. And boys, before they've gone through puberty, dress them up, put some makeup on them. Honestly, I hate to be, you know, the person who says what is gender, but, you know, it's not hard for them to look like girls from a distance with their little voices, acting like girls. Yeah, it'd be fine. So that's the context of production for Twelfth Night.